Sean and Horn Hero. How you doing, guys?
Doing good.
All right. So the last episode. Oh shoot! Did I not write down the name of it? Oh, God, I thought I wrote down the name of it. Oh wait, no, I did. Is Look for the Light. Again, like I said, this is the last episode of the season. So we're just gonna go with you first, Sean. Overall thoughts of the episode.
I overall liked it. Man, I was surprised at how dark it was. I guess a lot of the signs of it were there throughout. You guys even maybe warned me a little bit. But I'm impressed that they would go there. Part of me doesn't like it. I'm disappointed and frustrated, but I give them credit for making me disappointed and frustrated. And I'm not so much disappointed in the writing or the filmmaking with the characters. To make me to make me feel that about the characters, that means the writing and the filmmakers are doing a good job. So
yeah,
thumbs up, impressive. I think it's one of the. I think if this had come out last year, I watched a lot of TV in general. Last year, I think I watched 25-ish different TV shows, and I had a hard time narrowing down my top 10, and a really hard time getting the order of number 2 through 7 or whatever. If this had come out last year, it would have been top 10. It might have been top 5. I mean,
oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I can't imagine it not being top 10 this year. If it's not top 10 this year, then this year is going to be the best year of TV ever.
That is fair.
Fingers crossed.
Horn Hero. Also, welcome, Alex Bloodfallen. We're just doing The Last of Us review for episode 9. But go ahead, Horn.
Spoilers. No, I enjoyed it. It was a good adaptation and almost one-to-one from the game.
Yep.
I was just hoping they'd go a little bit more above and beyond, but that's just me. As somebody that has played the game, as I've said, 24 times and seen this ending so many times, I was hoping they'd go a little bit more with it than they did. But that was just me being super hopeful. It was still very well executed.
Yes. I overall loved the episode. Actually, it was like Horn said, a 1-for-1. It was pretty much everything. They highlighted all the little bits. We're gonna go over this in detail, but it was surprising on how much they incorporated with it. And like I said, we'll talk about this a little bit later. But me and Horn were debating. So I was kind of defending it. They probably should have kept it true to the source and not differed that much, because it's a tricky thing to do that and not lose the overall goal of the episode. But anyways,
I will say, I understand the idea of being true to the source, but I didn't see the source, and I thought this was awesome. It's hard for me to think of how it could have been better.
That's part of the debate. Yeah, I was like,
and maybe to someone who saw the original,
thank you,
that might be how you define better, is being closer to the original. But it's not how I just want this to be good. I don't care if it's like the original or not, and it was good. And maybe it could have been better. If making it more like the original makes it better, then it's hard for me to be upset with that. But it's hard for me to be upset with what they did, because I thought it was outstanding, and I can hardly think of how it could have been better. So.
Can I go off on a super short tangent? Sorry.
Sure.
So, ways that they've gone away from the source material and made it better. The Bill and Frank storyline, first off, was not in the game at all. But that storyline, from episode 3, I cannot deny, was awesome. It was great, and it really added to the story. It made what was just a really action segment and a lot of fun actually be translated to film, and made it really interesting and get you into the characters. Same thing with going into the place with Tommy. And again, Tommy's place is just a lot of action and a lot of going through things. But in the way that they made it in the show, it made it like a live community. You got to see the connection between Joel and Tommy, and you really got to see Joel start to open up. And those were things not in the game that really brought it forward and made it better. And so I guess
things were character driven instead of action driven.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I guess I don't know if I wanted it to not be action driven, because I really did think that the action really brought a lot, especially the way they filmed it.
Mhm.
I guess something along those lines, something to make everyone seem more human is what I was hoping to see to make it quote unquote better. But it's so hard to mess with what is almost, I'm not going to say perfection, but is already really good.
Like, it's considered a masterpiece, you know, that like in the game community, this is considered a masterpiece. And, you know, if, let's just make it a 9. Let's just say it's a 9. To make it a 10 would be really hard, but you could easily screw it up and make it an 8. So let's just make it a 9. Let's make it exactly what people in the game know what it's going to be.
And make it a 7 or a 6 too.
Exactly, exactly. You know, let's just keep straight to the source material, and that's how I kind of interpreted it as. I understand what Horn is saying. They could have maybe made it a 10, but they also could have just made it worse. You know, and it's a tricky thing to adapt stuff in the first place. So
it's dancing on a knife's edge.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys not spoiling me on the original game, but I'm trying to interpret what Horn's saying. It maybe if in his final episode, some of those people he murdered through the building, if we knew their names or their goals, their personalities, it might have felt even more dark or murderous for Joel to kill them. Is that the type of thing when you say go deeper that maybe you would like more? And I have a thought on that too, because it's a way. I didn't even think of what Eric was saying. The idea, if you just like stick to what they did, what you know is good, you know, you might find some way to make it better, but you might screw up and make it worse. Like one way they might have made it worse is by giving some of those characters more personality or dialogue. You might start to make some other thing more clear. Sorry, I'm beating around the bush. I had this thought that we as an audience just have to sort of accept what the Firefly, or maybe we have to accept what the Fireflies are telling Joel. Yes. But how sure are we? Like, they drug this girl, and a few hours later, they're going to kill her and give her a lobotomy. How sure are they? Have they done this 4 times before with other people and finally figured it out? Like, there's no one else like... I mean, it's a lot to assume and expect that they know exactly what they're talking about, and this is definitely going to work. And there's no other way, you know. So as I was watching it, I did kind of believe all that. But after the fact, I was maybe just trying to justify Joel's actions. I was like, what if it didn't work? What if they're not right? What if they're too hopeful? What if they're not telling them the whole truth? On and on.
We're going to just
if you got too much more into those characters and that dialogue, that might have started to become part of the plot, and we might start to justify Joel more. And I don't think they want us to justify Joel more.
Yeah. So. We're going to talk about this, what you just said, at the end of the episode. That is
probably a
lot huge
of thing ahead too,
about this episode, this show even, is what you just kind of hit on. Anyways, I guess
I will say though, even if I'm right about all that, did he really have to murder all those people? Was there no other way? Couldn't he have shot them all in the knees, or you know? Anyway, we can get to all that. Yeah.
So we'll start back at the beginning, which was with Marlene and Anna. And I assume this happened in 2003, pretty much during the outbreak. It may have happened a couple of months later. I'm not quite sure, but it's definitely early on because Anna is pregnant with Ellie. Anna's running away into the woods, gets to a house. I guess this is supposed to be a location that the Fireflies, or at least Marlene, told them to go to because they're breaking out from the area they're at. Ellie.
Actually, that should be around 2011 or 2012.
Oh, you're right, because Ellie's younger. Good point.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good point.
Maybe 2010. I think they said she's 13 or 14.
Exactly. Yeah. She's definitely younger, but she's not as young as the apocalypse. I didn't even think about that. So good call. But she's like running away from an infected. The infected attacks her, bites her as she's giving birth. This is obviously why Ellie is immune, because she was pretty much bitten immediately. Well, not her, but like her mom was bitten and it got into her bloodstream, and she
barely, right? Like
exactly, barely.
The slightest exposure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Through pregnancy too, which might filter it in the blood in some other unique way. Yeah.
Yeah. Like in general,
something that's rare and unique and mysterious to figure out, and the mom lies about it too. So
exactly.
They can't quite be sure, you know. Yeah, hard to recreate this or whatever.
So Marlene is Anna's childhood friend. By the way, if you don't know, and I know Sean doesn't know, Anna is played by Ashley Johnson, who plays the original Ellie in the game. So they've been bringing a lot of characters from the game into the show to give them a little cameo.
Anna? Was that the mom that gave birth?
Yes, that's the mom.
Okay,
so it's kind of nice that Ellie, the person who played Ellie, plays the mom of the new Ellie. I don't know. It's a nice little.
It's like passing the torch.
Exactly. She has the baby, and Marlene comes in, and she basically says, protect my child. She's not been. I gave birth beforehand, and kill me because I'm going to die. It's pretty actually interesting that she survived a long time with that bite. Like, I think Horn said that it takes roughly 2-ish hours if you're bitten in like a far place, and the thigh's not even that far. Like, it's still like, it's like I guess there's that more in the middle of the body. So
I seem to remember it was like 12 hours if you were bitten on an extremity, like your hand or your foot took 12 hours.
I said the closer to the brain it was. I thought the arms were 2 hours. The legs were like 12. But
Maybe,
also think about this: it passes through the bloodstream, and she's just been sitting down.
That's true.
So
she hadn't been moving. Yes, and I don't know if this matters or not, but like she had the will to try to survive as long as possible, because if she died, or she would just rip her kid apart. So I wonder if
she had the knife on her throat.
Exactly. So I wonder how much of that, like I said, they don't explain this, but like how much willpower you could have before turning. Like try to withstand it. Kind of like in real life, they say like you get like extreme powers when your kid or whatever's put in danger. Like people picking up cars and all that. I've heard of that. I don't have a clue if that's actually true, but it's just interesting.
You can get like a burst of adrenaline, but there's still a limit on the laws of physics and the strength of your muscles and stuff. You can do more than you would normally, but like someone picking up a car, they don't like pick it up over their head and throw it 2 blocks like the Incredible Hulk. They're just able to lift it 2 inches or something, like with leverage. They're not picking the whole thing up off the ground, but still strength they wouldn't normally have. But you don't get like magic powers. You just get, greater strength than you would normally have,
Fair. So the most important thing obviously about this is 2 things. Ellie was obviously born and she was bitten. Well, her mom was bitten. And 2, Marlene and Anna were childhood friends. She had trouble like even trying to kill her best friend. It's interesting how, like she watches Ellie, but she doesn't raise Ellie, because obviously she was put in like some camp, some soldier camp or whatever, Ellie. So that's interesting. I was worried they were not going to have this connection with Marlene and Ellie, and Anna, because I don't know if you knew about the mom's name, but you did know that they were in the game. They were best friends, and that was like a huge motivation of Marlene in the game. So I'm glad they at least clarified that. So any thoughts on this beginning episode or beginning scene with the past?
If you have something more, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't say anything, but I was definitely thinking, I'm like, this episode was just too short. I needed like another half hour.
I did take note, by the way. I think it was only 43 minutes or something like that.
Very
short. A lot
of
the episodes have been closer to an hour, and I thought this one might be similar to the first episode and be an hour and 20 minutes, but being 43 minutes was like, oh, all right, well, they sure crammed a lot into it, but yeah. The show's so good. That's a good fault when you wish there was more. That's like one of the best things.
That's
one
true.
of the best complaints you can have.
It's like a good pie. You're like, oh, it's gone already?
Yeah. Where the flip side, when you complain something is too long, that's a problem. Yeah. So a thought I have is kind of connected to something that happens at the end, but I did feel like I should bring it up now. Especially because you were downplaying Marlene's relationship with Ellie because she didn't raise her. But we don't exactly know how long Marlene had Ellie. Like, she might not have raised her through her teenage years, but she might have raised her to age 2 or 3, maybe.
That's fair.
That would be enough to have quite a motherly bond.
That is a good point. Let me phrase. I was scared that they were not going to even do it at all. Like that Marlene just popped up in episode 1, pretty much. That's when she like knew of her, and she was kind of watching her, but I didn't know she had a strong connection like the game. And they did, like they clarified she had a strong connection with her mom, which therefore she had a strong connection with Ellie. But that is a good point, that she may have raised her for a couple years, and Ellie may have not even remembered because, well, she was a kid, baby.
Now, to follow up on that a little more, though, another angle to take is how long has Joel been with Ellie? 2 months?
Yeah.
They've got a pretty strong bond already.
Yeah, maybe right? half a year at most.
and maybe that bond also is not, maybe at least a part of it is Ellie filling this role of Joel's lost daughter. So maybe the bond happened more quick or strong than it naturally would have otherwise. That's worth considering. Also, a grown person, a teenager that has their own sort of personality and goals and everything, maybe you can bond more strongly with them than just a blob of an infant. Babies are, as a parent, you're going to bond strongly with it. It's just a natural human thing, but you're not going to like relate to each other over puns or over this shared experience running away from zombies. The baby's just kind of unaware, and you just love it out of like its pure nature of innocence, not quote unquote real bonding, like Joel has with Ellie. And so Marlene maybe didn't have the baby for 2 or 3 years, but you can still bond pretty strongly in a short time. Although maybe you bond more strongly with someone who can talk and has their own personalities than just a baby. But also, anyway, all this stuff's kind of going through my head. I don't necessarily have a conclusion, but I think it's worth thinking about all of it. Mm-hmm. One other angle is that even if she only had the baby for a few months and then turned it over to someone else, still think about what those few months would have entailed. Marlene would have, like, right now they're in, I don't know, Salt Lake City or, some middle of nowhere place, and she ends up in Boston. That's very similar to Joel going from Boston to this middle of nowhere place. And with a baby. Like Ellie sometimes could help. She could be a lookout. She could help keep the fire going. She could shoot someone with a gun. But this baby would be a detriment. It would cry. Yes. It would need food and warmth. It couldn't take care of itself. And so Marlene would have had to go through a lot of effort to get this baby from point A to point B, even if at the end of it she just turned it over to someone else. But she might have kept it a little longer. And you can imagine she might have been more motivated to keep it a little longer after she had it through that time. Maybe she's more motivated to get rid of it because it was such trouble and she's got to get back to her leadership position. And lots of mothers in the world are in leadership positions and they are able to do it, but maybe not in post-apocalyptic world. I don't know. I go back and forth on how strong a bond Ellie and Marlene might have really had. I'm inclined to think, especially at this point, that Marlene's bond is more like this passive, subconscious, emotional thing that is swirled up with this idea of saving the world and justifying everything she's done with the Fireflies,
right?
As opposed to like a real emotional parent bond,
Yeah, and I guess worst comes to worst too. She sees Ellie and sees her best friend. Like obviously that would be a factor
too. The bond
too.
of her mother is swirled in there too. Yeah, good point.
So jump forward. We continue the journey of Joel and Ellie. If I had to guess, this has at least been a month, maybe 2 after. They didn't specify it, but Joel is healed, and everyone's bruises are healed. Yeah, like Ellie doesn't have a bruise on her nose, for example. Like she got banged up in the prison. So I'm assuming it's at least been a couple of months, and obviously it looked like they walked probably a good portion of their time, and they had to go figure out where the hell this place was because it looked like this is not the only hospital they searched. They made an indication that could this be the hospital that they've done a couple of hospitals and there was nothing, they got the wrong hospital. So
it seems to be more spring or summer. Like it was snow on the ground, people freezing and starving winter.
Exactly.
Last episode, and now there's greenery. They're not like I don't even remember if Ellie had a jacket on, but
she had like more of a folly, clothing line, I guess, like flannel, but not. Yeah, you're right, not like a coat.
And again, based on the distance traveled, compared to I think it was 3 months later, the last time they had sort of a big jump and they had to travel a significant distance. I would say that's a good guess, 2 to 4 months.
Yeah. Were you gonna say something, Horn?
No, I was drinking water and I hit my mic.
Oh, fair. So they say they see a hospital over there, the St. Mary's Hospital, which that was on the sticky note. St. Mary's Hospital, if I'm correct. It definitely is in the game. So that's why I sometimes get confused if the show actually said it, but I'm pretty sure that was on the sticky note. Nonetheless, they continue walking. He brings up, I saw a guitar back there. It was broken in like an RV, but I could teach you it. And Ellie seems to be a little bit I don't know, distant. That's a good word. I was gonna say spaced out, but distant. That's good. I can see probably in her mind she's realizing the journey's coming to an end, and she doesn't want to leave Joel if because she may have to. They don't know what is going to happen once they find the Fireflies. She has a mission in a way. So I assume that's been like going through her mind. The feeling of separating from Joel. What are your guys' thoughts on that? What she was thinking?
I was also going to say she's also probably still traumatized by what she did to David and what David was trying to do to her.
That is fair.
Like, that's not stuff that you just walk off. Like, Joel, we've shown, is not a great therapist or comforter.
That's
so,
fair.
like, so he probably doesn't know what to do. I'm sure Sarah never had to deal with someone trying to R-word or even try to kill her / eat her. So he never had to comfort her from those kind of things. Well, except for the one time, but he didn't have to worry about that afterwards. That's really awful to say, but
You're talking about like when he killed the neighbor?
I was talking about when he killed the guy that shot her, like, or when they got shot by the military guy.
Yeah, her last moment. Yeah. fair.
He couldn't exactly comfort her out of that. But Ellie,
even killing the neighbor too, they didn't really have much time to deal with that.
Yeah,
like,
she was in shock. She was like
I
crying.
think it was less than a day later she gets killed.
Yeah.
But say she had survived, a week later she might have still been thinking about that moment and confused or frustrated or whatever else. And,
that's fair.
Especially because it's someone she's known her entire life.
Yeah, that's like another weird thing, like killing somebody or seeing somebody get killed that and your father does it. Like, how does that traumatize a kid? Like, I highly doubt they brush that off.
They
a lot. It does a lot.
How that might traumatize too with Sam. With Sam?
Mm-hmm.
When he was like, if you get bit, are you still you inside? Like, that's something he was wondering about.
Yeah.
Even if on some level Sarah knew or understood that she was possessed or had an effect, whatever it was, still part of her was like, well, that was still the woman that she was. It was still like this person I knew when you killed her. Like, people in this world maybe have a little more understanding, but Sarah didn't even have that. And even in this world where people have more understanding, the young child Sam is still trying to understand better, trying to figure it out or piece it together. He doesn't really have enough understanding, and Henry doesn't know what to tell him. Ellie doesn't know what to tell him,
Right.
So what the heck is Joel going to tell Ellie? Yeah.
On an extreme situation. Fair.
Can I tell you what I thought was going on there? I don't think they ever said it.
Yes, they didn't.
And so I'm not very confident. But I think it was her birthday.
Huh.
I think that's why she was distanced and removed. It's it's something that might normally be some sort of celebration. She doesn't feel like celebrating, and they started off with her birthday. So that was my thought. Whether it was her birthday or not, whether or not that's at least part of what was making her distant, I still appreciated what the scene seemed to be showing was that Joel is trying to be a father figure.
Right.
And I don't know if he's trying extra in this moment because she's being distant, or is she being extra distant right now because he's trying, or because it's her birthday? I don't know. But one way or the other, we see him making these genuine attempts. He's sort of coming around, trying to connect with her in a way she used to try to connect with him. He's becoming a new person. They have a new relationship, but at this moment, she's distracted for whatever reason.
I was going to say, also, this as a show, and also from the game, every time you're walking around with Ellie, she's always talking. She's always like telling jokes or asking questions about like things from the past.
Yeah.
this is the first time, both in game and in the show, where she's just quiet.
Mm-hmm.
She's not talking. She's not asking questions. She's just vacant.
Yeah.
And
that's not just like idly them walking. That's with him trying to prompt her.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Usually when he's stone cold, silent, miserable, and stoic, she's still talking away. But here he is making jokes, asking questions and suggestions and trying to bond. And she's still, yeah, whatever. Okay. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Now they get to like some building, or it looks like it was under construction or something like that. They find a ladder, which this happens in the game. It's a little differently in the game, but it's the same overall meaning. They boost her up. She gets the ladder. She knocks it down because she sees something or drops it and runs toward giraffes. And I was very curious if they were going to do this in the show, because I was like, this is hard. Either A, CG, B, animatronics, C, they get a real, giraffe. But this is not easy to do, like, overall. It's a big budget or whatever. I just thought they were not going to do this, and I was hoping they were, and I was very pleased that they did it. It's just a beautiful random moment in the game, when the world is so chaotic. You see innocence, like, I feel like giraffes are innocent. It's just a nice scene. Thoughts on that, the scene?
Thought it was cool. I could tell you, I actually went to a zoo one time where there was like around the giraffe enclosure, there was like this, I don't know what the word I want to use, rampart? That's not the right word, but like this raised walkway.
Yeah.
And you could feed the giraffes. Like you're like 3 stories off the ground, but you're right at eye level with the giraffes, and you could give them like lettuce leaves or whatever. And they really had these weird long tongues that would come out and get out of your hand. And they would like, the different giraffes would like jockey for position to like whoever was giving food out. It was a very neat experience. And yeah, I didn't think about what it might have taken to film this scene. I wonder if maybe they had a real giraffe in a similar structure to where I was, and just the cityscape and the greenery all around was CGI'd, or if they were in a.
I think,
because I don't think they were in a real decomposed city that was overgrown.
It was like a stage. That's I had to guess. So. Yeah. No. Yeah. I was like paying attention to the giraffe, and I was like, "Is this animatronics?" I'm like, "That tongue is so real. There's no way that looks like a real giraffe." But I could be wrong, and they just the advancement of technology is like really good. Like sometimes when you like incorporate or add an animal, you have to worry about the actors and actresses. Like, what if it bites them? I don't know if a giraffe could actually bite somebody, but I assume when you if you add it,
are dangerous.
I was like, if you add something that is exotic, you have to be careful for the actors. So I was debating. I was like, was this real or was this not? It looked real to me, but I admit, like I said, maybe it's just really good CGI.
I looked up some stuff behind the scenes and confirmed that it was real.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, cool. That's awesome.
But
go ahead.
I was just gonna say that this is also just a great moment because Joel gets to see her starting to open back up again. A moment of pure childlike glee.
Yes, absolutely. She goes from being. Oh, go ahead.
Reminiscent of that moment in the mall when she's just like running up the wrong way on the escalator or whatever. How she has this sort of like Horn said, this childlike innocence and excitement or whatever about her that rarely gets to come out in this miserable world. But
especially after being so closed off, it was nice to see.
Yes, she got to open up, and she they were able to talk after this scene. Yes.
Going back to earlier, I realized that birthday or not, probably what's going through her mind is they're nearing the end of this journey, and she's worried about whether Joel's going to stick with her.
Yep. Exactly.
She's probably in her mind playing out the scenario, showing up with the Fireflies. She knew how past Fireflies have treated her. She knows like her role in the world is about to change. She may or may have not considered things like she might just get strapped to a table and lose her liberty or her life.
Mm-hmm.
But even if she's not totally strapped to a table, she probably still can't go on these adventures with Joel and spend almost every waking moment with him anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's probably kind of dreading the end of this relationship that's formed. Joel, I wonder how much Joel is in denial about it, or himself. You know what I mean? Or maybe
or he has the opposite
thinks
effect.
It will keep going like it was, or what's that?
I was gonna say, or maybe he has the opposite effect. He knows that this journey is going to end, so I better take in as much as I possibly can because this may be the last
get the bond
moment.
again now, so that we stay together after we get there. Or make it clear to her that she's not just cargo anymore. That I'm not going to drop you off and leave. We're together now.
Yeah.
And he maybe hasn't thought out the reality of how it's going to go when they get there. But
I was gonna say we haven't seen them talk since the David incident, but the last time they really talked about this was at Tommy's, where he kind of kind of blew up on her, saying, "You're sure as hell not my daughter, and we're gonna go our separate ways."
That's a good point. Yeah, they never. You could argue they never really had a conversation that discussed that situation even more, because like he was pretty harsh with her in the Tommy episode, and his actions had changed obviously after that. But like he's never said directly, you're my daughter. I'm so glad that you're with me. Type of.
Now, in his mind, he said
he needs to, though.
He doesn't need to.
And I
correct.
think they even clarify that to us, because remember he started to tell the story about his scar and his shooting himself.
Yeah.
He's like, I never told you this. He's like, you don't need to tell me why. I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
And I think that indicates that there's a lot of stuff that maybe they haven't said out loud to each other, but they still understand. They don't need to say it. We understand it when we're watching. They understand it being together. So sometimes what you don't say is meaningful. I think people understand sometimes the reality of what's behind someone, even if they don't say it.
Yes. You're gonna say something more?
I don't know.
I have one other thought when they're in the city there.
Yeah.
The idea of these drafts being around. At first I was like, oh, geez, I felt like she was being so reckless with the noise that she was making and running around corners without looking first. But I started to think about the idea that if there are these drafts there and we haven't seen infected already, they're probably not there.
Correct.
Like, I feel like there's enough noise that the infected would have been drawn to it. And we're not seeing any signs or any dead bodies. And they probably didn't just show up in the city 5 minutes ago. They probably, some of the signs that would clue them into what might be dangerous haven't been there yet. And
right.
I still think she's being a little reckless.
Oh, absolutely.
But I can understand, after everything they've been through, the amount of time they've been out there on their own, the amount of stuff they've seen, you might let your guard down eventually. And the moment when you see drafts might be the moment you let your guard down.
Fair.
Now, one thing that was kind of fun was they did kind of allude to this scene in the second episode. In the second episode, as they're walking through and they're showing shots of the city and they're trying to figure out how to get through, underneath one of the cars there was a little giraffe plushie, which fans of the game saw that and they're like, giraffes. But it also brought the question, well, if they have a giraffe there, does that mean they're going to have the giraffe scene later? And so that gave us a little bit of something to look forward to in the last episode to see if they're going to include that or not.
That's awesome. I like little foreshadows potentially, like this keyed in there without people realizing it.
Yeah, of course, people that haven't watched
of sorts.
Yeah, but I was like, but it's only Easter eggs for people that played the game, because for people that watched the show, they're just like, oh, it's a plushie.
Exactly.
It's the same thing with the picture of the two guardians in the area where Sam and Henry and Ellie were all kind of in the little under. Yeah, that picture has no meaning to the people that are just watching the show, but people that have played the game and found that little like storyline of notes and followed them, it holds a whole story of depth for that one picture.
It's also, that's in the game. I didn't realize that picture was directly in the game, so that's a straight up in the game too, which is awesome. I mean, I just thought they just made it, but I was like, oh, that actually was a picture too. So, but so they go into a military camp, which happens in the game too. And he starts talking about the scar that Sean brought up. In episode 3, he referred, he's like, yeah, I got a scar. Someone, it's not easy to shoot people. You just assume someone was shooting him, but he was like, no, I tried to kill myself after Sarah died. I just missed. He flinched, or he doesn't even know why. Are you guys wondering, or do you guys have an answer for why he maybe flinched? I actually don't know this.
So
he wasn't certain. He wanted to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I kind of got, but
you know, from dialogue in the game.
Okay.
In the game, in the hotel scene, which the hotel was shown in episode 2, which should have happened later, but whatever. From the game's point of view, when you go to there is a couple that you meet,
right?
And there's a little interactive icon that they get to talk a little bit, Ellie and Joel, and they're like, "Oh, well, I guess they took the easy way out." And Joel's like, "It's not easy. It's never an easy choice."
That's fair.
Now, it's he of course. So again, same thing with the R word. If you talk about unaliving yourself, you can get in a lot more trouble in a game, because bringing those themes up can increase your rating. So they couldn't just blatantly talk about it, although they did it with Henry, but that wasn't talked about. That was an instant thing, and then kind of not fully talked about much after that.
Are you talking about suicide?
So, yes.
Okay.
Oh, since this is going to go on YouTube, and Twitch also kind of doesn't like that word.
Oh,
I'm trying to avoid the word. But so they don't directly talk about it as much, but they do leave that hint that he had done that, but they never have this moment where he directly says, "No, I did, and I missed," or "I almost attempted, but I failed."
Fair.
And but he says it in almost as many words, that he considered it. He strongly considered it, but he couldn't go through with the decision.
Right. Let's see. I
also saw a little fan art where somebody drew like the spirit of his daughter pushing the gun off to the side a little bit.
That's
and I'm like, well, that's not exactly what happened, but I appreciate the sentiment of the art.
Now, he says that, or Ellie brings up that time heals all wounds, and he's like, time didn't heal all wounds, or it wasn't time that that did it. Obviously implying that she healed him, or she helped him, become humane almost in a weird way, which he becomes inhumane. But anyways,
I was gonna say, it also fights off the adage. Like, the adage that time heals all wounds is just so grossly inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
Time doesn't heal all wounds. People heal wounds.
Yeah.
And so I really like that they included that. He's kind of mentioning that, no, time didn't heal this wound. You helped heal it. It's just really important lesson there, not just for like Ellie, but for regular people, that people heal.
A really good graphic dealing with the nature of grief, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's so good. I don't know if you can put it on screen if I send it to you.
I probably. It's more tricky because I don't have it set up how I should. But what does it say?
I thought I was gonna find it instantly, but now I can't find it. Wait a sec. Oh, here we go.
I feel like there's 5 stages of grief I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a thing. How can I send this?
Well, could you just read it off?
Okay. It's an image. It's like a visual thing. I guess I could try to describe it, but it's hard to come through as well.
If you mouse over the image, press copy, and come over to the Discord and paste it into the memes or Fox Nation photos. Under general, you could go ahead.
I guess I actually could show it. I forgot that I'm using Discord, so therefore anything in Discord is shown.
Nation photos.
It's right above general chat. You'll see Fox Nation photos. Yeah, yep, it does. And I'm pulling it up right now. Okay, I have it. That's pretty small. Anyways, it says people tend to believe the grief shrinks over time. What really happens is that it grows over our grief.
Yeah, that's fair.
We grow around our grief.
Oh,
what it shows on the top, it's like a jar with a big black ball in it.
Yeah.
And then next to that, you see the jar, and the ball is a little smaller than the jar with a tiny little black ball in it. but they're saying that's not really how it works. And then it shows the jar with a big black ball in it. Then you see the next image, it's the same big black ball, but the jar is bigger.
Yeah.
Then you see the same big black ball, but the jar is much bigger. And the idea is the grief hasn't gotten smaller, but we as a person have grown bigger around the grief. And it's still just as big as it was, but there's just more stuff to us in our lives. There's more stuff in that jar. And so it's not as relatively big to who we are.
Mm-hmm.
It gets smaller. We just have more to ourselves to deal with and cope and grow around this big ball of black grief. I hope
That's
I
really cool.
described that well.
Yeah, no, you did.
Ever since I saw this, I can't stop thinking about it. It's such a good demonstration of the reality of how we deal with things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also going to add that we also kind of get to see the 5 stages of grief with Henry and Sam. Like Henry kind of goes through all 5 stages in like a minute or less than a minute. It's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. Of course, acceptance being the moment he pulled the trigger. He was like,
"Yeah,
well, this happened."
By the way, I know we're gonna get to it, but I keep thinking about that moment too because it's like, how to say this? That moment when Kathleen was sort of chastising Henry of like, was it worth everything? And now we see Joel making Ellie worth everything.
Yep.
He's abandoning, he's like murdering individual people. He's abandoning like the hope of saving humanity. Even his integrity, his relationship with Ellie itself. He's lying to her. Like it's
powerful.
It's the same thing we saw happening there. We see happening again here.
Yes, absolutely. Which is why I like the Henry and Sam story a lot more. Having to play the game, the parallel between him and Joel are very similar. It's like they foreshadowed it, with the So the Joel asked to get out the pun book, and they just start talking about the puns. And Fireflies or military, you just assume they're military at first, are in the background, and they throw a grenade or a flashbang, which throws Joel off, and then they go and hit him in the head. This happens differently in the game, but kind of the same. But they were just getting to the point. So they still come up on them and they knock them out. That was
I've been going off on a couple tangents, so I'm going to go off on a little tangent.
Before you do that, what the heck does? So one of the puns, and I still was trying to figure this out. I don't know why I can't figure it out, but moon rocks taste better than earth rocks. Why? Because they're meteors.
They're meteor. They're more meaty.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Okay. I knew I couldn't figure it out. I'm missing something in it. That's great.
There are flash grenades and there are joke grenades.
Some of them just take a little longer to explode. But, so first I'm going to talk about the moment in the show. Seeing the military units in the background while they're telling the joke perfectly, excessively creates anxiety for the audience.
Yeah.
Because you just were having this nice cute moment, then all of a sudden, danger, they have no idea. That is good. So for the show, that was good. In the game, you had just cleared through an area of infected, which also I was like, we don't see any infected in the city? Not even corpses? I don't know. I thought that was weird. But regardless, so they get through it, and they're traveling through this water area. Of course, a line that Ellie said in the second episode, which hasn't come back yet, is that Ellie can't swim. So it's very dangerous moment. And what happens is, as they're traveling across, they're going across a bus, and Joel falls into the bus, and the bus starts moving down the water. And it's like huge panic moment. Water is filling the bus and like pushing against him, so he's like struggling to get out. Ellie jumps on the bus, and of course, if she falls in, she could die because she can't swim. So it's extremely, extremely dangerous moment where it ends with Ellie suspended in the water with like God, I call them God rays. It's like the sun coming through the water and the light beams coming in, and she's not moving. And of course, you as the player and Joel are panicking. Get her out. And then, okay, she's not breathing, doing CPR compressions and like trying to get her up. And that's when the Firefly people come in. They're like, hands up. And he's like, she's not breathing. And then he gets knocked out.
Yeah, it's so brutal in the game.
But that is such a higher emotional moment for Joel, because for Joel, sure, he has the moment spike of adrenaline when he sees the grenade cover her and then he gets knocked out. But the moment of, I don't know if she's alive or dead after that, is infinitely more terrifying. So it makes him even more wanting to see Ellie, because like he wants to make sure Ellie's okay.
Yeah.
And like, because of course last he saw her, she had been passed out in the water, which is bad.
Now, of course, in the game too, this kind of like goes into like why Ellie didn't know what was going on. She was unconscious in the game, you know, so they just immediately prepped her and didn't even like, you know.
Well, we don't know.
No, that's true. We don't know 100%, but
we don't know how.
I remember that was a debate in the game. They're like, did she, you know, why didn't they just wait for her to like wake up? Did they wait for her to wake up? Did they ask for her permission? You know, it was like I said, it was a debate. I felt like, you know, with the choice versus the show. It's apparent that Marlene didn't let her know. You know, they just make that straight up.
That part yet,
but yeah.
I was just gonna say that's the one thing that the show does that the game didn't, which made I think the game a little bit more complex, is that we don't know if Ellie gave permission. I was gonna say, I was like, was it consensual?
Yeah.
In the game, there's no way, they don't say whether or not she gave her say. So maybe she did wake up and was like, yes, I want to go through with this surgery. She could have said that, but also she could have not, and then that also adds more to the reason of why he does what he does. But in the show, they've removed that level of nuance. They just say, no, we didn't tell her.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they completely removed it. I wouldn't argue this point too hard, but I did wonder a little bit in the end when she asks, you know, is everything you're telling me the truth? She knew, or at least she might have this foggy memory that's unclear because she was drugged or whatever. She's testing whether or not he'll tell the truth. I feel like that's at least a potential.
We'll talk about that.
I don't exactly expect that's what's going on, but I also think that it's a similar scenario, them, you know, the flashbang and waking up from being unconscious, which Joel might have also been drugged after the flashbang, in addition to just being hit in the head. Same thing with Ellie. We don't know what mix of different things they might have done to them before, because remember, those random dudes that discover them, they don't know who they are. It's a while before they get to Marlene, so they might have re-drugged them multiple times. It's hard to know if it was like 2 hours or 2 days later. But I think it's just similar. Like maybe Joel comes to with a little more of a panic when the last time he saw Ellie, she was drowning. But he might be in a similar panic when he wakes up here, because maybe she's being, as you say, R word, right? Like not just killed, but who knows what else these people might have done to her in these last few moments, or hours or days or whatever. I think they end up setting up a very similar scenario as far as the condition they're in, the emotional state they're in when they wake up, is what you described in the game. Maybe it's a little less urgent. But the budget it would have taken to have like water and a bus, like I totally understand that decision. They took what would have been, literally might have taken $1 million and multiple actors and sets and direction and stunt people and all this other stuff. It might have taken 10 minutes of the show, and instead they did it in 1 minute with 2 actors, and you know what they did, I think, is very reasonable.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I very much agree. I was just saying that the moment was a little bit more frenetic. There was a lot more panic in Joel's part. So the fact that he almost tries to just jump up and be like, okay, where's Ellie? Makes a little bit more sense. Whereas that one is like, he wakes up and he sees Marlene and 2 guards, and he's like, oh, fireflies. Maybe she's okay. Yeah. He can have a moment of less panic.
Yeah.
Because he wakes up and sees the Firefly logo. True.
It does also. Just seeing that logo, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's entire, yeah.
This brings up Marlene. Marlene apologizes to Joel for her men knocking him out because they didn't know it was Joel or Ellie. They thought they were just dead or they're just lost in the United States. Like they had no clue their status. So
actually, how I would have
been infected. They could have been spies or Vedra or
exactly.
Aside from just trying to change some parts that would change not possibly everything, but just this, I would have loved to have seen at least a 10-minute scene of Marlene and company trying to get to the hospital. That way, we see them leave the Boston quarantine zone, them trying to cross the country, because they're going straight to the hospital.
Series, just a couple clips of Marlene, with her crew, or even moving across. Just a reminder of what's going on with her. Is that what you mean?
Even just a little bit after this part where she rescues Ellie and kills Anna. It would have been cool because then we could have seen her reaction when she finds out that the group that Joel and Tess were supposed to meet were dead. That would be heartbreaking news for her because it's like, did anybody see a little girl? Did anyone see these two with them? It's like nobody had any vision of any of them. And then so that would be like, well, maybe they're dead. So we could have a great moment for her of her just either breaking down or losing it. Just something to make her more human. Yeah. And then, of course, we could see her squad get killed by infected while she's able to just barely get away, or however they die, because we don't know. She just said that I took a whole unit with me, and we barely made it through just me. Or whatever. Something like that.
Yeah.
So, like, I would have loved to have seen that so we could see a more human side to Marlene, whereas we only ever really see her as the strong and assertive leader of the Fireflies.
Right.
We never really see much more beyond that. And captor of Ellie, exactly. Yeah. So we never see her much beyond that.
So
you see that in the game? Do you get flashes over Marlene's storyline?
So I feel like the whole reason
why that's something you feel like the show could have done. The game didn't. You would
absolutely.
More,
I obviously understand. Maybe why they wouldn't have done that, because once you're with Joel and Ellie in this episode, you're with Joel and Ellie, and actually you're with Joel. You get to see his point of view, what he's thinking. This is like where it gets tricky. If you dive too much into other characters, it's harder for you to justify Joel's actions. I still justify it. I think it was wrong, but you're trying to see exactly the information he is given, and maybe that's the whole reason why they didn't show too much more of Marlene. I understand that they probably should have, but like I can see why they didn't. Because in the game,
maybe they're still trying to keep the audience on edge about how bad they feel what Joel did. And it's pretty bad as it is, and they didn't want to make it worse by giving Marlene more, making her more of a sympathetic character.
Yeah. It's definitely tricky.
It might also be one of those things where, just from like a production standpoint, or like a marketing standpoint, like people, I don't know how much this is a factor, but I feel like it's got to be some amount of a factor for the writers and editors to think about someone who's just watching this episode for the first time without watching the rest of the series. And they'd be like, "Who's this Marlene character?" It might be extra confusing to throw that in, and that's why I was thinking if they had done it throughout, like if every other episode we got a clip of her.
Yeah.
And there's more continuity if they did a little bit more of it here, but then I can see how you're spending more money and more screen time and more actors. And anyway, I think both these things you're saying, Horn, like if you could just snap your fingers and make them happen, if you could like just snap your fingers and have the bust with the water happen, or have Marlene be more featured all along, I think it probably would have been a little better. But if you have to spend millions of dollars and make every episode be 3 minutes longer, then I can see why they didn't do it,
Well, like I said, the bus scene, I'm perfectly fine with them cutting because I know how much that costs. But I feel like it wouldn't have cost as much to include a little bit more to humanize Marlene just a little bit. But again, like I said,
that's a complaint. Yeah,
it's still a great ending that I've seen 20 times. 25 times now, and I was just like, It's still good.
We're nitpicking on how it could have been a 97 instead of a 94. You know.
Yeah.
So then, Marlene brings up that Ellie is in surgery, and she talks about why Ellie is immune, and that the cordyceps have grown with her since birth. But cordyceps grow around the brain, and they're wanting to remove this in order to multiply the stuff in her in a lab and give a cure to everyone. Like, give it to everyone. This is the cure. They're positive that this is going to be the thing they were looking for. But Joel's like,
they're presenting it as though they're positive.
Exactly. But Joel's like, it's the cordyceps grow around your brain. You're going to kill her. And
also, I do like this the way she talks about it, because in the game we never really talk about how it makes her immune.
That is
Whereas
true.
in the show, she said that it's been growing in her or with her since birth, and this cordyceps sends signals to regular cordyceps saying that, oh, she's already she's already a walking mushroom. You don't have to worry about spreading, but it doesn't. But she's not, so she's able to continue living.
And Sean brings up a valid point. Will this actually be the cure? No one knows. Even Marlene doesn't know. She hopes, and and if you hope, if you think it's, it can't cure people, do you do it? Do you murder a little kid to save millions? Maybe, obviously Joel is like, that's bullshit.
If you're hoping to save 10 people, or if you're hoping to make $1 million, no, you don't do it. But if you're hoping to save humanity, maybe you do it.
Yeah.
How strong is the hope? Are they 99% sure? 90% sure? 50-50? Even 50-50 to save humanity, I think you do it.
Right. It's
I think the person that does it is still guilty of murder.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's say that there's a 50-50 chance that if we kill Ellie, we save humanity. But the person who does that, I still think is guilty of murder. But I think you should be willing to be found guilty of murder and executed in order to save humanity. If you're willing to kill Ellie to save humanity, you should be willing to die to save humanity. So that's a thought I have. And I think we might have touched on that in the past.
Yes.
But I don't know. But Joel preemptively murdered all of them before they even got a chance to save humanity. So, and he murdered all of them. Some of those people might not necessarily know what they were doing. Every one of those guards, they didn't necessarily know that Ellie was going to die. Like,
yeah,
we don't even necessarily know that Ellie was going to die. Like, maybe they can get this out of her brain without killing her. Like, maybe there's a chance it doesn't work. Maybe there's a chance she doesn't die. Joel didn't find any of this information out before he just started killing people.
Yes, and they I felt like made this a point multiple times that the people that Joel kills are just like him. They're just normal people who are doing a job. Some of them may have bad intentions, but most of them don't have just a bad intention just to go and kill people. They're just trying to survive.
And if they did have bad intentions, Joel has bad intentions too.
Oh, absolutely.
Some of them might have had a daughter they were trying to protect, or a daughter that died that they haven't gotten over yet. All the dramas that Joel's gone through, these people probably have gone through similar stuff.
Yes.
Maybe not quite as bad, but all the murderous stuff Joel's done in his past, these people haven't necessarily done that either. But anyway, I'm going to keep jumping on this every time because I'm so frustrated and torn by it.
Yes, which is good. So they have, Joel in the game. It's one person, but he gets escorted out of the place. Marlene's like, you did your job. I'm going to give you a chance. I could kill you, but I'm going to, I respect you and I think you deserve to live. Don't screw this up, and sends her out. But if you do something, my men are going to shoot you. And he gets escorted out and he's thinking about what he's going to do. And then he just goes on like, a murder spree, just takes out everyone. Which I remember this in the game too. And I was like, for one, obviously there's a lot more fireflies. Actually, there's not. Anyways, I was worried on how they were going to do this thing, because I was like, are they going to just have like 2 or 3 men? Are they going to just slaughter a whole pack of people? And they just slaughter. He slaughters like at least a dozen people, or maybe 10 or 5, whatever. He slaughters a lot of people in this episode, the scene, which is an important factor, I feel, just because how far will he go to protect Ellie? Because it's a selfish thing to do, when it comes down to it. And like Sean says, these people have families. These people may have daughters or wives or friends, and he just kills them. And some of them even like bring down their gun. They're like, okay, I surrender. And he kills them anyways. They like made a point of showing that, he is just killing them. Now, reasoning maybe because he doesn't want them to hunt him down, but nonetheless, he's a murderer. It's a selfish thing to do this. And it's just interesting, because I was very torn. Yeah.
Like, not only the relationships that these people might have that he's ruining by killing them, but think of the sacrifices that Joel went through to get to where he is at now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think those people made any sacrifices? Do you think they like left something behind, killed someone that they didn't want to? Do you think that any of them maybe have some value to society, like the freaking doctor that he just killed? How many of those people like know how to fix the engine of a car, or know how to perform surgery, or all the valuable skills that there's so few and far between, and society is gone. All of them, all their histories, all their hopes, all their skills, all their relationships. He just removed them all instantly so that he could save one. They're all trying to save everyone. Mm-hmm. He's trying to save one person. It's so selfish and unfair. And
yes, that you bring up the doctor. Like, he's a doctor. He doesn't have a gun. He brings out what was it? Not a syringe. A skillet. I can't remember what those. A little knife thingy. And he's like, "Oh, was it?
Scalpel.
Scalpel. Thank you." And he's like, "Don't go near her," because he's trying to save the world. He thinks, and he's like, "Boom, shoot, it's dead." Like, he could have shot him in the knees. What is he gonna do? But he just murders him. Luckily, he didn't murder the nurses. Just to let you know, Sean, you have a choice of murdering the the nurses in the game. At my last playthrough, I just murdered everyone just to prove a point how terrible of a person Joel is.
It might be a mistake. So depending on how you define mistake. Like, it might come back to haunt him.
Yeah.
Those they saw him. They know what he looks like. They know he got out of there with a girl. There's probably, even if there's not some other Firefly somewhere in the vicinity of that hospital, there are in other stations around the world. They can point out, like,
yes,
this is the guy that did it. This is what it looks like. This is where they went.
Good point. They even focused on, like, the doctor one more shot. Like,
they could tell Ellie the truth later on.
Yeah. Like, he picks up the Ellie after he tells the nurses to, like, bandage her up really fast, take all the stuff out of her and bandage her up, and they focus on this doctor died. Like a close-up shot of him, and then he goes down the elevator. And the game is a little different because after you get the Ellie, there's still like men in the place, and you're like running around trying to get to the elevator. I'm glad
they didn't prolong it any longer.
Yeah, for one, it doesn't make any sense because why didn't someone just shoot him in the game? It's don't get me wrong, it's one of the best scenes in the game. The music is so good in this scene, and you're helpless as you're trying to get her to the elevator. But if you think about it, like, it just seems, I feel like having everyone dead serves the purpose, other than obviously the nurses, because they can't do anything. But they get into the elevator, go downstairs to the basement. Oh, well, before we get to this, do you have any thoughts, Warren, on anything?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go for it.
So the thing that makes this moment exponentially more powerful than just this is, unlike in the game, where in the game you're killing dozens, if not at least 100 dudes at this point, sometimes very brutally. So killing all these soldiers, meh. But in the show, Joel has a pretty light body count up to this point.
Yeah.
At least comparatively. And we only get references that Tess says, that Tommy says to things that they've done in the past. We don't see that. But we get a small glimpse into that with David when he handles those two guys.
Right.
So we start to get an idea of what he can do. And this is Joel at peak. This is Joel in full focus mode. And we really get to see how much of a monster he really is.
Yes. No, you bring up a great point, because I remember playing the game and it started sparking in my head around the David arc that I don't know if I like Joel's direction. I feel like he's not a good guy. I don't know why in my head I just thought he was a good guy. You're following the heroes and all that. But at that moment, and these are cannibals, and I'm questioning, Joel's actions. And then obviously the Fireflies was just like, holy shit, what is wrong with Joel? Like, I cannot condone his actions. You're playing him and you have to, do it. But I was having a hard time processing what was going on at this point, realizing that now I'm not like, he's not a villain, but like there's way more gray in this game. And, and I'm more siding with him being on the bad side than the hero side, which I thought was just so interesting for a game.
I'm not sure he's not the villain. Like, it's about perspective. And I think that's part of what's so good about this. But imagine this story. Imagine if this whole story had been told from that doctor's perspective. Imagine that doctor had been going from town to town, taking blood samples, avoiding zombies, trying to compromise with Fireflies and Fedra, and he just had this mission of trying to save the world, and he had to like leave his family. Maybe his wife got killed, but he tried to experiment on her, even though it was like hard for him to accept his wife, but he needs to know what's going on in her brain. And like, imagine all the trials and stresses and sacrifices that doctor made. And finally, there's this girl and this Marlene character, and she's kind of shady, but and he's got this hope. And all of a sudden, this dude comes in and shoots the doctor in the head. If this was the story of the Doctor, Joel would be the absolute definitive villain.
Exactly.
If after he shoots the Doctor in the head, the camera, instead of following the Doctor, now follows this villain out the building as he kills 13 more people. He's absolutely the villain. And if later on you find out, well, that was his daughter, like, okay, but he's still a villain. Why did he murder all these people? Why didn't he want his daughter to save the world? Like, there would be no way to justify him. Like, it's only because he's presented as a protagonist in the beginning.
Exactly.
And it's hard when that initial presentation is there to get away from it, to see it from another angle.
Right.
But that's why we're doing this podcast, because it's fun when we realize there is another angle to try and analyze it.
Exactly.
Analyze ourselves, analyze humanity, not just this plot or this character. It's more, it's bigger and deeper than that. So.
Did you have any other thoughts, Warren?
No, but I was thinking, just for funsies, after this, before we close, we should definitely allow Sean to see that alternate ending that got cut.
Okay.
The show.
The game had an alternate ending, and it was a fun alternate ending. Not fair. All right. So we're gonna get to the Marlene scene. He goes down into the elevator, goes down to the bottom floor, I guess, so like where the cars are, and he's ready to take her out, and Marlene's there, exactly in the game too, and she's basically trying to give him a way out. She's like, we can still save the world. We can still, figure this out with Ellie. And sorry, I'm trying to figure out where I'm in my notes, because there's a lot of stuff she says in this, which is, straight ripped from the game, but like let's see.
Honestly, nothing they say here is anything new.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but discuss over. Tries to convince Ellie not to be saved. That the lives in this world are broken. So you have a chance to save it. Sorry. But basically, when it comes down to it, she tries to give him a way out, and he shoots her. she even puts down her gun because she could have, I guess, theoretically shot him, but like she's torn too, not about him doing this murderous thing, but I feel like she knows what he's going through because she doesn't want to do this, but she knows it has to be done. We have to try to save the world, even if it means, I have to kill my best friend's daughter.
Not to quote Star Trek or anything, but the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Exactly. And you're going through hell, but you just need to accept this. And he just doesn't want to, he wants to be selfish, and he's like, you're wrong, and shoots her. When it comes right down to it, I feel, thoughts on the Marlene scene.
Yeah, it was good. It was like the final cap. It was the final clarification. He's just gone over the edge, gone too far. One thing that's important about it, one important thing she said there was that Ellie would choose to sacrifice herself.
That's the one thing I missed. Yes,
is basically what she said. Yeah, and
except
that's why Joel has to lie to her later, because he knows that she would have been willing to sacrifice herself, and he doesn't want her to.
And this is one of the reasons why I thought it was really important that they mentioned that they didn't tell her. She didn't get the choice. Yes, maybe it is what she would have chosen. Maybe she would have chosen to die for all of humanity. But it would have been her choice. And she didn't get that.
I think that's interesting that, Marlene still chose not to tell her, even though she could have, even though she thinks she would have been fine with this. And she may have been fine with this, but she chose not to.
No, I just thought of the joke of, Marlene in the show is played exactly by Marlene, the voice actor. And it's almost like, if I could do it all over again exactly the same, I would. She did.
That is true. But yeah, it's interesting. And, it goes back and forth between, she's like, right before he shoots her, like it looks like he lets Marlene go, and they're in the car together, and Ellie wakes up, and she's like, what happened? He's like, we got raided, and I had to get you out of there fast. That's why you don't have clothes.
He didn't fully lie at that part. They did get attacked by raiders. It's just that the raiders was just Joel.
Actually, that's pretty funny. But and she's like, did people die? He's like, yeah. He's like, what about Marlene? And it's implied that she died. He doesn't say it, but then you see the scene, and he just shoots her, and he goes up to her, and she's like, spare me, and he just shoots her anyways. Because he doesn't want her finding them. You're a liability. What's up?
I really want to hear Sean's reaction to when they cut from Marlene with him holding Ellie to the car. What was your initial reaction to that moment?
I'm not sure the moment you mean.
Okay, so Marlene stops them. They're looking, and she's talking, and then they kind of just cut to Joel driving in the car. Doesn't show Ellie. It just shows him driving. What was your very initial reaction to seeing that?
Yeah, oh man, he killed her. That was my reaction.
Oh, okay.
Just one more person had gotten his way. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, no. So I remember my very first time reacting to this 10 years ago, and I was like, what? You're not going to show me that conversation? What happened?
Yes.
I was in a state of frenzy because I was actually doing it for the first time on hard mode. So that whole sequence was a pain in the butt. It was hard. And I had spent a good 2.5 hours on my first playthrough trying to get through that. And so I'm like, finally, I got to the cutscene. And then they just cut away. I'm like, you're not going to show me it?
Yeah. No, I was torn. I was like, I'm pretty sure he killed her. Did he kill her? And then, of course, they come right back to her, and you see it. And they're like, oh, okay. This is what happened. Damn. You're an asshole, Joel.
What it's worth, I would have been okay if they didn't show it. I appreciate when a film or a TV show or whatever, and reveals something to you without showing it.
That's fair.
You could go too far with that, or sometimes leave something ambiguous it wasn't meant to be. It's not always the correct thing to do, but I think in that scenario, I think we all knew that he killed her. And I like the idea that maybe that's even why they did it that way, because they want us to realize that we knew it all along. Does that make sense? That they don't need to show us. We know. Okay, we'll show you, but you knew it, right? I think that's probably why they did it that way, which is really good. It's great storytelling. It's outstanding, top tier storytelling.
I remember also when I played the game, and I played with friends, like after, like I replayed it, and everyone was like, you could argue with a lot of characters being wrong or in the game, but everyone thought that Marlene was innocent. That was basically unjustifiable what he did. He just straight up murdered her for her trying to save the world. And I had this thought too, and I was like, Joel just took it too far. Like if we were following Marlene's story, this would have been tragic as hell, but we were following.
It's tragic as hell anyway.
Well, it is. It made me respect.
It's almost as tragic to see Joel do this. It's almost tragic to see Joel be such a villain as it is for those people to die. Not quite, but almost. Maybe even it is more so because we're scared of what else Joel's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is a little less serious, but a group that I followed that played through the game, they made the joke that, dude, we've already seen that you can live through a gut shot. We know you're not dead here. Because that's literally what she
shot her in the head, right?
Yeah.
But
yes.
She was shot in the gut when he was holding her, but then when she was like begging or whatever, he's like, "You're just gonna come after me." Bam.
Yeah, but they were making reference to the very beginning of the game, or in this case, the show, where they run into Marlene and she's shot in the stomach. We know she's going to survive as a gut.
And
we already know she can survive.
Maybe she could have. Maybe she could have got up into the elevator. The nurses could have patched her up. But and that was like the he's like, no, I need to kill her. I need to make this for certain.
And he does utter that last line of, "You just come after her."
Exactly. It's not you would come after me. It's you would come after her. He's protecting Ellie. At least he's thinking he's protecting Ellie.
In his mind, everything.
His actions by protect. I mean, maybe he really is, but not in a justifiable way.
Exactly. So we get the last scene. Them heading back to Jackson, to Tommy's area, and their car breaks down. They walk the rest of the way, which is like 5 hours, and they're like, "God, this is nothing." With how much walking they've done, but they talk about Sarah, and he's like, you would have gotten a lot. You would have liked Sarah. And she brings up Riley. That was her first kill, and the first person she knew and cared about. And then it, went to Tess and Sam, and Joel says, sometimes things don't work out the way we hope. Like she's like scared about like the spiral of things. But he's trying to say that Well, what's your interpretation on the his line here? You too.
Which line?
Sometimes things don't work the way that we hope when it comes to like people dying. They're like their friends dying as they traveled.
Just he didn't want it to go that way. He maybe he has some regret or some remorse, but. I still think he's basically justifying things to himself.
Yes. He does mention that, if we keep going, we'll find something new to fight for, which in this case is Ellie. He's finding a reason to live in this world, to, in a way, replace his daughter, his feelings. I mean, obviously, they intertwine a lot, But Ellie is like, She realizes that she needs to know. She's like, swear to me that everything that happened with the Fireflies is true. Everything you said happened, with the Fireflies. Is that true? And Joel's like, I swear. And she contemplates for a moment, like for a good moment. And then it's like, okay. And this ends exactly like the game, that like exact close-up shot of her face, where you pretty much like are like super zoomed in on her face, super close up, and her eyes and all that, and her saying okay, and then they cut. You brought this up, but like, what were your thoughts on what she was thinking?
I was just
one thing go ahead.
You go ahead first.
One thing I wonder is if she had some foggy memory. If at some point she did come out of, whatever haze she was in after they got hit with the grenades and ostensibly drugged up, and I wonder if there was some pieces of memory, something that she heard or saw or questions she was asked, but like it's blurry. Like if you ever had surgery, I was put under for like to get my wisdom teeth out, and when I woke up, like I didn't know what was going on or where I was. You know what I mean? My memories of what had happened were hazy, and some of it slowly came back to me over the next 24 hours, but not all of it, and it was hazy. And if someone had told me something or another happened, or I did or said, or I would have just accepted, especially if someone I trusted, I would have just accepted it. But certain things, if someone had made up some story, a day or two later, I'd be like, wait a minute, I thought that I seem to remember. I would have at least gone through some uncertainty, and in the end, I might have shrugged my shoulders and accepted what the trusted person told me because I was drugged up and couldn't quite remember. It must have been a dream. But I can't help but wonder if some amount of that was going on, if there was some amount of her trying to reconcile some memory she had through the haze of it all. Maybe she just really didn't remember. I wonder if, she could tell maybe when Joel's lying. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's some detail that didn't quite add up, like, so now we're just in a truck driving away. Did you know who details that he normally would have given or normally wouldn't have given? He was, I feel like there was some amount of her trying to process it all, feeling like something was off, not quite being able to identify it, and so she just accepted it. But that I still wonder down the road if she's going to continue to question it. Even if she totally believes she told the truth of it, she's still going to have a hard time. Maybe she might feel guilty those people were killed, or maybe we can try again, that like the things he told her to try to get it out of her mind. Like, yep, they tried a bunch of times and they're giving up. Like, well, maybe someone else is trying. They had hope once. Maybe they can have hope again. Like, she might keep feeling like there's a way to try to do something new or different. She might still want to tell Tommy and everyone back at the camp, hey, we got to find some doctor or fireflies to figure this out, Mm-hmm. Joel's going to have to keep on lying to her. Like, I feel like every time he looks at her, he's telling a lie. He's going to have this deep guilt inside of him that it's hard to predict how that might affect someone who already is maybe a little crazy, right? Like he already has dubious morals. He's already dealing with trauma. And now the one true thing in his life is based on a lie. Like, I don't know. I just don't see this
playing out.
There's not a happy, tidy ending to this,
It's fair. Horn?
The only thing I have to say about this moment, besides that it's, of course, acted wonderfully between the two of them, is that in the game, Joel hesitates before he says, I swear. Pedro Pascal did not hesitate.
No, it was like cold. He's like, yep, this is the rabbit hole I went down, and I believe it now. I'm going to believe it.
And I'm not going to lie, I don't know which version I prefer. I liked
probably
that. I liked in the game that he took a second to deliberate telling her the truth, and then decided to knuckle down and be like, or to double down and be like, no, everything I said was true. But he hesitated. But I also like that in the show he didn't. Yeah. He didn't hesitate. He's like, no, I am fully on this track 100%, and maybe a little bit. He believes it.
Yeah. Well, you have to also think like, in the game, you don't see his reaction when he's killing people. We're just I don't say having fun killing people, but like we're playing a game. In the show, every time he pulled out his gun and he shot somebody, he was so focused. He was like he was a completely different person if you think about it. When he shot the doctor, when he shot Marlene, he it's like he distanced himself. He's like, okay, I need to go into this mode where I'm just cold, and this is what is going to happen. Like if I if I care, if I think about what I'm going to do, it's going to get to me. I have to basically be a Terminator, emotionless, a cold-blooded killer. That's at least how I felt when, the show version,
There is some amount of maybe he needs to do, in order to do this, he needs to, and maybe a scary thought, that when a person is able to remove their morality and fear for their own safety, right? Those two things are what he just suddenly didn't have when he went through this, right? You can do a lot of damage. You can kill a lot of people, with that mindset. But it is worth noting there's another piece to his mindset, because there's still some logic working in his brain, I think.
True.
I don't think that maybe he's a cold-blooded killer, but he's not like a lion, right? He's not just a random savage animal or a lightning bolt. He's still using human intellect. The idea, part of killing that doctor, was that when he's on this time pressure. In general, he's got to hurry because more people are going to show up trying to stop him, or they're going to kill Ellie before he gets to her, right?
Right. No, that's very true.
He can't mess around. He on some level, he might be able to reason with the doctor, or maybe even if he shoots him in the knee, those nurses, all these people who think they're saving a world, like he's dealt with fireflies before. We see how determined Marlene is. They all have this cause that's bigger than themselves. Kind of like Joel, right? If Ellie's a cause that's bigger than himself.
Yeah.
And so they might be willing to sacrifice their lives or test his conviction. So if he just starts yelling at the doctor, nurses still might not cooperate. If he just instantly murders him, it lets the nurses know there is no room for negotiation. I will just murder you.
That's
right?
Fair.
You're not even going to get off with being shot in the kneecap. I'm just going to murder you. It makes them comply more quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And some of that might be going through his mind with the one guy that surrendered. He's like, I can't take him prisoner. I'm not going to question him. I can't risk him sneaking up behind me or calling for help. I just have to kill him. He's going through this logical process of how to complete the mission, and it's required to instantly kill all these people. Now, it doesn't make it okay, but it is. I guess it's just demonstrating. Right. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but he's not just a random savage killer.
That's fair.
He's a calculated killer.
Yeah. I forget about
might
this.
have put his emotions in check, but he still has his mental capacity.
In the game, I forget about this. The guy who he shoots, the two guys who are walking behind him, he turns around and kills, one and shoots the other one in the kneecap. And he's like, where is she? And he's like, I'm not telling you. He's like, I don't have time for this. And he shoots him in the head. In the game, he shoots them in the leg or something like that. And he's like, where are they? And the guy doesn't comply. So he stabs him in the stomach. And the guy just blurts out. He's like, oh, she's over in, the medic room. And I'm like, the guy would not say that in this game. The guy's dying. Why would he give up his position? I actually like the fact in this show, he just said, I don't have time for this, and shoots him. Because he does kill him the same way in the game. It's just, there's a little bit more to it, which was unrealistic in the game. A guard is randomly spelling out the whole plan. I'm like, whatever. Anyways.
Also, I was wondering if Sean would pick up on this, but I feel like, aside from the thing that, there's dozens of them, I think every word he said to Ellie was true. He believes that them being there and doing what they've done has not done a lick of good. They have basically been wasting their time and have not been able to find a cure because they are bad at their jobs. Every word, if you really think about his exact wording, he's not wrong.
Leeway, yeah. It's kind of like saying, okay, World War II was fought in Europe. That's not wrong, but it ignores the fact that it was also fought in the Pacific Ocean and the Pearl Harbor and all that other stuff, right?
Right.
You could say something that's not wrong, but also not true or honest. And I think, I think you're making a good point, Horn. He has a way in his mind to believe this. He's what's the word? He's double his what's the dichotomy,
cognitive dissonance.
That's it. Thank you. Cognitive dissonance. He's he's giving it to himself. He's bathing in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, but yeah, like the only thing he just straight up lies about is that there's dozens of other people immune.
That is true.
Yeah.
Which, yeah. Now, a big question, and I feel like this has been the biggest question about The Last of Us. Did Joel...
Real quick, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I just want to follow up on what Horn said.
Oh, yeah.
He tells that lie, almost everything he says, but like that lie specifically, he's telling that because he wants to keep Ellie from thinking she's special. He's trying to keep her from getting it in her mind that she needs to save the world.
Absolutely.
Saying all the different things he needs to turn her off of this plan altogether, because I think that he believes what Marlene said is right, is that she is a good person and would make this sacrifice, and he doesn't want her to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
that's fair.
I appreciate that Horn brought that up, and I think it's a key.
It's like the thing that they said in Avengers. This is referencing Marvel now, but they said to Tony Stark in the first Avengers, he's like, "You're not the guy that's going to make the sacrifice play. You're going to be the one that tries to find every other way around a problem before trying to make the sacrifice."
Actually.
And what does he do at the end of Avengers? He takes that nuke up by himself.
Yeah.
He does make the sacrifice play.
Right.
It's kind of...
that eventually. He wouldn't have done it in the first Avengers.
That is true.
That was the first Avengers.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the end game.
No, I was talking about Avengers 1. They decided to nuke New York instead of letting the aliens possibly take over. And he's like,
I can't flies up.
He flies the nuke into space.
It not really be a sacrifice, is what they did.
Yeah, it wasn't a full sacrifice, but he accepted it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
He went up into space thinking he might not come back.
Right. So
he got lucky.
It's a little bit of a tangent, but it's one of my problems with most superhero movies and a lot of action movies in general. There's often this dilemma: save your girlfriend or save all the people in New York. Well, they always just get to do both. Superman is able to save Lois Lane and stop the missile from going to Chicago. Spider-Man is able to save everyone on the gondola and Mary Jane or whatever. Like, they always get to just do both. And that's why The Dark Knight was so good, because he couldn't do both. Yeah. It was like first time I was like, whoa, the superhero failed. That was like...
same thing with Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Amazing Spider-Man 2. Oh, yeah, it's the
second Andrew Garfield Spider-Man.
Garfield one, yeah.
There's so many he didn't get to save Gwen.
Yeah. Now, originally, to be fair, the original, he was supposed to marry. Well, it wasn't Mary Jane; it was Gwen. Was supposed to die, but they changed it to Mary Jane, and Mary Jane can't die, so he gets to save both. But the original adaptation or the original story, she did die. He didn't save both, which that's what the second Spider-Man person did.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So the question: did Joel do the right thing? Or, like, I feel like that's like been a big question, and we've pretty much, I feel like, had an answer for that.
No, like everybody's had the answer. That did Joel do the right thing? Fuck no. Like that's not a question. It's
but
the answer.
People have defended Joel and think that the wrong or the right to justify the wrongs or something like that.
No, on a personal level, he made the right choice for himself. And maybe made the right choice for Ellie, that now she gets to live a life.
Right.
But beyond that, absolutely made the wrong decision. Mm-hmm. Killing who knows how many people. Killing a doctor who could have saved other people's lives.
Yeah, just not her.
Killing Marlene, who was trying to help fight against the kind of fascist dictatorship that's kind of been building up on a lot of the quarantine zones. So, did he do the right thing? Absolutely not.
I think you might be able to argue that he did an understandable thing. I think, like a lot of people might say, I would have done the same thing to kids or whatever. But
doesn't mean it's the right thing.
Those people are really being honest. I don't think they really understand what it means to murder somebody. But again, I also want to give some leeway to the fact that we're not sure that they were really going to save Ellie, or they were really going to save her. Well, this is just a chance. But we're also not sure they were really going to kill her either. And what Joel did is it gets worse, kind of like what I was saying before. Once he decides that he's doing this, if he could have done it, if there was a way he could have done it with only killing 2 people, he would. It's not like he wanted to kill 13. But once he's made this decision, he has to kill everyone that gets in his way.
Yep.
And so it's not. I feel like it kept getting worse with each person he killed. I mean, it did, but it was really just the initial decision to do this. It was just one bad decision, and everything else was just follow through.
Yep.
Now, in a court of law, he would be guilty of 13 murders, not 1. But yeah,
now,
I think
there is one more
I think
thing.
He absolutely did the wrong thing. Even if there might be some way that you can understand it or justify it, I still think
That's fair.
Wrong.
Yes.
I think there's one thing that no one has talked about. Now, in the show, or in the game, the cordyceps grew through her, so that's fine. But in the show, they mentioned that the cordyceps that have grown with her since birth have made the cordyceps dormant, like in her arm and such.
Right. So,
if they remove the thing that's sending the signal saying she's cordyceps, won't those grow and then potentially turn her into affected and still kill the doctor and nurses?
I don't know. That's a good question.
They might just be aware that they might have had her strapped down and knew they were gonna have to, chop her head off.
I didn't see any
drugs in her system or whatever. But
yeah,
maybe, but we also don't know how those drugs would affect cordyceps once they fully become active.
Well, that's something that they could test, though. They could still know that like a horse tranquilizer knocks out an infected person.
Maybe, but I'm just.
It's like these doctors have no knowledge of anything in this whole realm. They have extreme knowledge in a lot of things in this realm, just not this one little thing that's new to them.
Yeah. It is an interesting
I see what
thought.
You're saying. It's possible that if they had done this thing, she would have popped out of the bed and killed them all anyway. But I still, even if that's true, even if we knew for sure that would happen, it still doesn't make what Joel did okay.
Right.
Yeah,
because they're still trying to save everything. Is their point?
And another thing that the group that I mentioned earlier that made the joke of like, yeah, Marlene, you're just gonna survive this wound. We need to make sure you die. Was that because it's a video game and they're still thinking of it as a video game before the final scene played. They thought, well, what if them operating on her brain turns her into a giant mega infected? Because those cordyceps have been growing in her all her life, those might become some huge, crazy infected monster.
I don't think that matters.
Of course, but it's like that's not what it was. But I just thought that was just a funny thought idea of like, well, we could do that. And I'm like, yeah,
immediately Hulk out into a bloater, go from like a 410, 90-pound girl into a 710, 400-pound monster. That I guess that might be humorous, but I don't think it changes the nature of anyone's decisions or morality or anything.
That's fair. It was more of just a video gamey thing that they thought would happen, and I thought it'd be funny to share at least. So now that we've gone over everything in the show, final thoughts on the show as a whole.
I do want to say one other thing. Another point you made, Horn, that I appreciate is that keeping the body count low throughout the course of it makes it more impactful in this moment here.
Yeah.
Which I super appreciate. Same thing with the zombies in general. They used them so sparsely that when they did come, it was more of an exciting moment. If they had just been, 5 zombies jumping out of the bedroom closet door every episode, I would have not cared anymore. But since I think 6 out of 9 episodes had zombies at all. And I think 2 or 3, they were only really barely in one scene. I think that like this episode, it was just like in a flashback at the beginning. It's the only one.
With Bill and
one with Bill and Frank, it was just like it was a very brief scene, like on camera at a distance, walking into a trap.
Yep.
And then the one with Ellie and Riley, just like at the final moment of that scene. Those 3 episodes only had one zombie for one scene. And then episode 1 had a whole bunch as like the world's falling apart. Episode 2 had a whole bunch as they're trying to get through the city.
Actually, episode 2 only had
5 or 6.
2. They only had 2. No, you're right. I forget about that horde at the end.
The whole swarm at the end.
Yeah,
Chase it had to start a fire and all that. Yeah.
And episode 5 had the hard home
when they all come up
moment.
out of the
Hard
ground.
home.
Yeah.
But there's also at the end still, But yeah, and every
Also
time
at the end?
they had one, someone probably I think was dead or got bit. Like no one. Those are like seems like it's dangerous to be near an infected because most likely you're going to be bit. The only reason
every
that
time
Bill
the
wasn't
infected were there, people died.
Yeah. The only reason Bill wasn't bit was because it was way off in the distance. So, yeah, that's interesting. Oh, cool. So prediction time. What do you think? The whole game was covered in season 1. There's a second game, but I don't think they're going to be able to do season 2. Game 2. I feel like it's going to be multiple seasons.
They've already confirmed that game 2 is going to be 2 seasons.
Okay, I was like, that game is so big in itself. But
now, before we go on to predictions,
yes,
this is the last episode of this season. Let's talk about the season as a whole.
All right. Yeah.
It's like season wrap up. Unless you want to save that for another episode of talking about it.
No. But we might as well.
There's plenty more to talk about, but that's kind of what I was doing, just reflecting on the nature of this as a zombie show. I guess it is, but just barely. It's not, I think, what most people think of. It's not what most people would expect.
It's true.
Whether they played the game or not. Not me anyway. And I appreciate that. It's not really what this was not really a horror show or a zombie show. This is
I don't know. A horror show it kind of was.
And maybe horror, but a different type of horror than you think. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a character-driven story.
Yeah.
Versus let's try to scare the shit out of you every episode, every minute, every second, like horrors typically do.
It's the realistic horror instead of the jump scare horror.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the Nope kind of horror, not the Paranormal Activity
kind of horror.
Yeah,
exactly. The horror that leaves you with existential dread after the movie's over, not the one that makes you afraid of the dark.
So, yeah, what were we gonna say?
But I'm trying to think of like other overall things to say. Like overall, the performances were outstanding. I think episode 2 is still my least favorite. I think that one's like a 2 notches below all the rest. There's a couple episodes I had some nitpick complaints on, but the episode 2 I thought was very frustrating. I don't want to say it was bad. I don't think it was a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10. But I think almost all the episodes were at least 8s or 9s, and that one was like a 5 or a 6.
Right. Do you think you would appreciate it more watching it? Maybe you'd realize it as an overall now that the show is good that you may appreciate little things in the second episode that you didn't realize or something like that.
I think I'd be extra frustrated. I think I'd be extra frustrated knowing how well they're doing overall. And especially because we talked about it forever in that episode. I feel like there's just a couple little things they could have done to make it so much better.
Yeah.
And given how well they did with everything else, why didn't they just do those couple little things that could have made episode 2 so much better? So there were good parts to episode 2, and I did try to, make a point of giving credit for that when we went in detail on that episode. But
So episode 2 was your least favorite. What was you think your favorite episode? Actually,
I'm still pretty sure. Go ahead.
I was just first. I guess we should do. What's your least favorite episode, Horn? I guess we'll name it.
That's not even a question. It's episode 7.
The Riley episode. Okay. Wait,
yeah.
No, that's episode. Wait, is that episode 7?
Yeah,
that's episode 8.
No, episode 8 was the David episode.
Oh, that's right. There's only 9 episodes in the series. I'm dumb. I don't know why I was thinking 10.
So 7. So every episode before and after that episode has done everything at least as good or better than the game. It was the one episode that did it worse.
Yeah. Now, I also thought that, I thought episode 7 felt off for me. I played the game because I played it after we did the review, and don't get me wrong, there are things that the episode did better than the game, but overall, it's like a game. Like you're interacting a lot more, so things made sense more. It was fun, I guess. It's hard to translate that into an episode without it feeling off. I don't know how to phrase it, but so yeah, I would agree that, and also, when we say this is the worst episode, we're still, like Sean's saying, these are a lot of the episodes are 8 or 9s. These are just below that. So
now, what would your overall ranking be, Sean?
Well, wait, before he does that, what's his favorite episode?
Oh yeah, true.
I'm kind of torn. I want to say I think I'm tempted to say, I think it was episode 6 was the one where Sam gets infected and married.
Yes.
Episode 5.
Episode 5, yeah.
Where Ellie has that talk with him the night before, where they're like writing on the board, and Joel, it's like doesn't want to have to kill the sniper, and about it. It's ironic because it had a bunch of zombie action, which is my least favorite part. But it still, I think, is my favorite because outside of that, everything else was so good, and it was like some of the best examples of all the things I like about it all happen in that episode. So if it's not that one, it might be the final episode, which again is like
another action.
I guess it had in the flashback scene. There was one little zombie moment, and it had a lot of action. But really, it was like frustrating. It was like, it's like the worst of Joel coming out.
Yes.
But it made me care so much about that happening. I got to give it credit. I think it's a good thing when I can't quite decide what my favorite episode is, but I think it's between those two.
Fair. Horn?
Mine is easily the 5th episode.
Fair.
Because again, when I'm looking for this series, as somebody that has played the game as much as I have, which I keep having to emphasize just because it's an important detail, at least in my opinion, I look for things that they present stuff from the game, they tell the story, but then they bring it a level above. They go above and beyond, and episode 5 just does that every way. Sam having a disability so that he can't even hear adds a level in a world where you need to be quiet sometimes to save yourself from the infected, and also they're hiding from the military. Well, not the military, but the people that overthrew the military.
Yeah.
So they've got to be quiet, and of course, because he can't hear, he doesn't know when he's making noise or how loud he's being, which can lead to some specific moments, like when he just banged on the wall while he was watching them. I'm like, don't do that.
Right.
And then also getting the little nod so that we still got the story of Ish, even
Which
though
is your
nobody
favorite story,
got to know about it. Favorite story in the game. And then also that moment with the infected was so cool.
Yeah, for someone who likes action, he loved the action scene. Yes.
Like, I like a good action scene, and that was a good action scene. It really showed.
I'm debating between 5 and 9. Horn is saying 5. Eric, what are you saying?
I think it's 5 also. It's between 5 and 6. So I'm a huge fan of Henry and Sam's storyline in the game, and it was the first moment where I realized that this game is something special. I personally like Tommy a lot for some reason. I don't even know if I could explain it, but I just like Tommy, and I think they did a great cast for him. And the scene with like Joel and him was some of the best scenes I've ever seen. Like it was just such a good scene. Obviously, the scene with Ellie and Joel is like iconic, but like I actually think I like the Tommy and Joel scene more because it wasn't in the game. It was just a neat thing. But 5, it just had so many good things about it, storytelling wise. The film aspect of it was so well done. To care about a character only for one episode is hard to do, and they did it. Of course, they had the action, which I don't mind action. But the overallness of that episode was just so well done. So yeah, I think we all are
to make you care about a character for one episode. He did that multiple times. They did it with Bill and Frank.
Yep.
At a minimum, there's probably some other examples that some people might feel that way about Riley, and on and on. So
yeah. So I feel like we're all in agreement that 5 may be the overall best episode out of all these really good episodes. So that's interesting.
Well, for new and for returning fans.
Yeah. So, an overall ranking for the show, then. I guess we'll start with Sean.
Let me clarify that I'm, excuse me, I'm pretty tough with my rankings, and I also think of rankings as being a bell curve. You know what I mean? There's only maybe less than 5, maybe only 3 shows that I would give a 10. And really, I'm not giving them 10s. I'm rounding up. They're 9.6 or 7. I round up to 10. And there might be 10 or a dozen that I give a 9. And there might be 20 or 30 shows that I give an 8. Out of hundreds of shows that I've seen, it's only the top, maybe 10 or 15% or 8, 9, and 10 combined are only the top 10 or 15% of all the shows that I've seen. And so I think I give this an 8.
Fair.
It might even be 8 point something, 8.2 or 3. And I'll also say another way I think about rankings is, okay, 10 is perfect, which it's kind of impossible to be perfect. Like, even if I don't know how to measure acting. How do you know it's perfect acting? But it would have to have perfect acting and perfect writing and perfect cinematography. Like, it's hard for me to imagine something being a 10. And 0 is worthless. It's hard to imagine worthless too. Like, even something that was like had awful acting, and awful directing, and awful cinematography, it would still have some value in analyzing what they did wrong or how funny it was that it was that bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, 5 would be average, 4 is below average, 6 is above average. I think 9 is near perfect, 8 is must see, 7 is worth watching. It's kind of like I don't know, whatever 2 and 3 are. I don't care. Right? Yeah. I try to avoid those. 2s and 3s don't really get made. Does that make sense? We don't see them because no one makes movies or shows that. They don't get funded. They don't get aired.
Yeah.
So most stuff on TV is 7. Most stuff is worth watching. You don't get some stuff is just above average, and what I want to try to, I don't want to watch worth watching. I want must see. That's what I'm trying to see, is all the must see TV.
Correct.
I think that Last of Us is must see.
Awesome. Horn?
I'm going to put it right above where I put The Sandman, which I didn't really talk on my channel or on literally anything. But I watched The Sandman last year, and I thought it was probably one of the better shows.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it did a little bit better than House of the Dragon. It was definitely better than Rings of Power. Jesus. But, like, out of the stuff that came out last year, I thought it was one of the better ones, but I still would only give it, like, an 8.5. But I definitely think I'd give the show, like, an 8.7 or an 8.8.
Fair.
I'm not going to give it a 9. There's still a lot of stuff to criticize, whether it be from just filming standpoints or as an adaptation goes.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still extremely good.
Yeah.
Very good.
I probably would put it around the 8 to 9. It's tricky. So I think, and I feel like a lot of people are going to say this too, that it is the best adaptation from a game to a show. They put so much detail and so much, they like honored so much of the material, and that's just hard to do, I feel. And you could screw that up also if you do it. And I just felt they did all that, right, on top of having good acting and cinematography, all the stuff that you need in order to make a show. The prepping of getting this all set up is like just insane, probably, because you really have to know the game, which obviously they got the director who made the game, so it's not as hard, but still to implement it into a series is amazing that they were able to do that.
I think my only criticism as it being the quote-unquote best adaptation is that the game was already kind of a movie, so adapting it to film wasn't as hard. Whereas I think Arcane I would actually put as the best adaptation.
I've heard that, but
League of Legends is the most awful game ever. Well, not really, but like in terms of trying to turn that into cinema or a show or anything, Arcane gives it a really good and like personal story with great acting. But every frame of the show is art.
So this is a question with that. I don't play League of Legends. I don't even know anything about it. How much in every scene did they implement from the show, the game, to the show?
Lots.
Okay.
There were lots of references to things that are in the game.
Because I felt like they did that with this. They looked at the material and they're like, okay, what could we do to make the scene better? What could we add from the game, or do we even need the scene? Let's and cut the scene just because it's irrelevant to the show. So I've heard that Arcane is supposed to be really, really good, but I was curious on how,
I think the difference is what you call an adaptation. So for The Last of Us, a lot of it was just they took the game and made it real life.
Mm-hmm.
So for one-to-one adaptation, it's good. But as the game goes, they barely adapted anything from the gameplay. It was just the cutscenes for the most part.
Yeah, but they did have to make a conscious effort of how much infected are we going to actually put in the show, because they have it in every part of the game. Or there's a big raid. There's a lot of raiders that come and attack you. How much are we? Is that really realistic? Let's look at it realistically. Stuff like that. But
let's just say that Arcane is a better adaptation than The Last of Us.
That's basically what I was trying to get at.
And number 2 adaptations, and
yes, agreed.
Really
That's
good.
True.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard.
I think
there we go.
That in
Sorry.
the end, Last of Us is better. I saw Arcane, and I also didn't play League of Legends. I'm familiar with it though, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a little bit more geared around like people working as a team to go beat a dungeon or fight each other, rather than a storyline that you're following. Does that make sense? And Arcane created an interesting storyline, and it was great animation, and it had some sort of surprising moments, went directions you went. I could talk a lot of good things about it, but I don't think it was quite as moving or powerful or relatable, and was much more action and CGI centric. A lot more about it that was good was that it looked cool. Where Last of Us, not that Last of Us didn't look good, but it was way more focused on these characters and moral dilemmas, which I thought, to be fair, Arcane had some interesting moral dilemmas, but it was still a little bit more like, I don't know how to say this, but like superficial, like big picture ideas, and not like relatable character stuff.
Yeah, my whole point was just on adaptation wise.
That's fair.
Last of Us has the better story by far, hands down, no question. I just think that as an adaptation, that and also
it's an easier adaptation to make. Even if it's the best, it's unfair maybe because it's easier to do it because it was so close to a movie in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's almost the same criticism for the Prince of Persia movie that came out. People are like, oh yeah, Prince of Persia movie, it was like the best video game adaptation so far. People are like, yeah, okay, but like the game was already a movie.
Now, it wasn't hard. Here's my biggest worry with the Last of Us, and like I said, they did straight rip from the game to the source material to the show. There aren't that many characters that are alive, and I was worried about that going into game. For one, I thought it just ended. I thought if they ended the first game, it would have been a masterpiece. They didn't need a second game. It's interesting enough as it is, but they did decide to do that. I was like, what is it going to be about? I mean, obviously it's going to be about Joel and Ellie, but like, can they make another game? And so that was like my biggest worry, I guess. And that's my bigger worry also, kind of going into it, knowing the second game is, are we going to be caring about these other, new characters? Because they have to make new characters, obviously, so are we going to be able to care about these new characters? Which I hope the answer is yes, but I feel like that's going to be a challenge because we've been with two characters for a whole season. What's up?
Not to spoil me, but right now I'm assuming it's going to center around Tommy and that community, and how possibly the Fireflies catching up to Joel and Ellie, or Ellie realizing the truth, or despite what she believes is the truth, still wanting something greater. I feel like there's a lot. They have. You're right that as we've gone through the show, most of the characters have been picked off, but Tommy and that whole community, they're all still there.
That's fair.
And Joel and Ellie, who are the core of it, are still there. So
I guess
I also am suspicious. Whenever a show's really good in one season, I'm suspicious of their ability to maintain it for another season. So
yes. Now we don't know that much about the other characters. I guess that's what we know about Tommy. We know about I should remember her name, the wife of Tommy's wife. But we don't know about anybody else in the town.
Rhea? I don't know the name either.
Yeah, I have it in my notes. I'll figure it out. But overall,
wasn't it Maria?
Maria. That's it. You're right. They're going to have to introduce these new characters. Will we like them? It's a complaint, I guess, with anything. Where we're going to like Dorne. They're introduced in season 4 of Game of Thrones, and we did. We liked. Most people like Oberyn.
Season 4, we liked Oberyn. In season 5, I don't know if we liked.
I specifically said Oberyn. I did actually like Doran personally. I just think that the direction with Doran was terrible after a while. Like, I felt like they lost the motivation of what they were supposed to do with that character.
He didn't have much screen time either. They just didn't focus on him
exactly.
At all,
But yeah. So now predictions. Season 2. What do you think is going to happen, John?
Yeah, I pretty much just talked about I mean, I could try to get some more specific stuff.
No.
But I expect that they're going to go back to Tommy's camp or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And, maybe along the way there will be some other adventures. Like, maybe season 2 will be about them getting back to Tommy's camp. And along the way, they're going to hit a bunch of obstacles, whether it's more raiders or more zombies or fireflies chasing them down. Feel like if they do too many episodes of that, it might get too boring or formulaic.
You said trying to get to Tommy's?
Yeah.
They're actually at Tommy's already at the end of the season 1.
You're right. They were like 5-hour hike down.
Yes.
You're right. Sorry. So yeah. Okay. So then I guess they're pretty much there already. So yeah. I guess it'll be some amount of being incorporated into that community, and maybe that community is going to have to face some dilemma. Because it seems like Joel and Ellie will be accepted there. And, maybe we'll get a couple episodes of getting to know those characters and informing bonds, which will make it more tragic when they get torn apart for whatever reason. Firefly show up wanting Joel because he murdered those people. Ellie mad at Joel when she finds out the truth. How quick, maybe by the second or third episode, maybe some other dilemma that they face, I honestly have a hard time thinking of how they're going to get through a whole season without
fair.
Joel and Ellie having to face the reality of what happened back there and still keeping it entertaining. We'll see. We'll see. I hope they keep the zombie stuff to a minimum. If or when Ellie does find out the truth about what happened, I don't know how. Maybe her violent heart. Oh, that reminds me. That was another thought I had too. Is that it might have made. Remember, I was a little upset that they made David. Was he like the cult leader guy?
Yes. Yeah.
Made him too obviously and completely a villain, and they just removed any nuance or ambiguity. Yeah. And it's not terrible, but it would just it made me like it a little less. I feel like there was some material there that they didn't mind because they just made him too evil.
Yeah.
But maybe that even making him evil, the way Ellie killed him so violently and brutally, still made us kind of worried about her as a character or a person or whatever. But maybe they wanted to make sure to remove that ambiguity for David, so that Joel was more clearly the bad guy in this final episode. That like Ellie, what Ellie did was, while brutal and violent, almost completely understandable.
Right.
But Joel is not understanding, and maybe they wanted to make that more clear, that difference between them. But anyway, we'll see. I feel like I haven't thought about it enough, / don't have enough information. And most of my thoughts, as I try to guess where it's going, they feel incomplete or like it's not enough for more than 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to think right now is I'm sort of assuming eventually Ellie's going to find the truth of it and how she responds to that, where things will go from there. Would they have the characters split up? Would one of them die? I don't know.
Right.
Think about it.
Now, I will say that the second game, to a lot of the people who played it, hated it. It won a ton of awards, but everyone thought it was like paid off because people freaking hated the game so much, which is worrisome to like me and Horn, because we're like, how are they going to change the stuff, like big stuff?
So some of the awards were warranted, like the acting of one of the females got an award for best female actress, and I was fine with that, because she did that role extremely well. I'm not going to spoil it because I think some stuff about that might be a spoiler, but there are some things they did well. The music was pretty good, and I think they won, but like the thing is that like also they were up against some super heavy hitters of games that had phenomenal music, and I think that those games had better music, so I thought they deserved the award. And then they got like best game direction and best storyline. I'm like, it feels like it stole from a Tarantino movie. Like everything's just all over the place. Like what?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. Without spoiling too much. Oh, not spoiling it. The game pacing was all over the place. I think like you would go from like, following this particular character, and then it would jump back to the past, and it would go forward, jump back to the past, go forward. Oh, we get to this climax. Let's go back to it. Let's go far back into the past. Let's go forward. Let's go back. Let's go. Like it was all over the place, and it was frustrating.
And to be fair, they did a lot of that in this. Almost every episode had a flashback.
They did, but it felt natural versus a game. I don't know. Yeah. It's hard to explain without actually just straight up spoiling it. I feel like they need to do more. I don't mind flashbacks, but
here's a good example. Imagine in the middle of the fight in episode 5 of Luke versus Darth Vader, they flashed back to Anakin and Padme on Tatooine from episode 2.
Like, I can see ways that it could be done poorly. And I'm even wondering, you guys might need to curtail this because you might give something away. I'm wondering, for example, if even knowing that like a lot of people didn't like the game, that let me tell you where that my mind goes with that. Is it maybe the game focuses more on how to manage this community that Tommy and Joel and Ellie and Maria and all these people are at, and there's more focus on like political intrigue among the leaders and how to distribute food among everyone. And there's just no zombie action, and so people don't like that. But to make up for that, they do.
God, I wish that was the problem.
Someone was mixed up in zombie action, and so they're trying to keep action in there for gamers who want to headshot zombies. But really, the plot is about managing a community, and that makes the timeline jump around a lot. And you're trying to do things to make everyone happy, but instead you make no one happy. I can see something like that.
One of the themes was violence is bad, I guess you could say, but you loved killing in that game. So I was like, what's the message? Like, why are they doing this? Like stuff like that.
It feels like you're killing hundreds of dudes, and then it's like, oh, but violence is bad. It's like somebody is preaching, oh, violence is bad, shoots guy in head. Oh, but nobody should be bad. Stabs guy with pitchfork. Yeah. You should all be just accepting of each other. Sets guy on fire. Like it's so
like sometimes and don't get me wrong, I love good gameplay, and if you just said, is this game really fun, I'm like, absolutely, this game is actually brilliant when it comes to the gameplay, but story wise this doesn't make any sense. It's actually frustrating if they preach this and then make you do another thing. That was really frustrating to me personally. Like I said, I hope that's not like too spoiler. I don't feel like that is, because obviously part of the game is like killing infected and raiders and all that, but it's more of the actions that caused that versus you just going out and I don't know. It's weird. Hopefully, like I said,
hopefully they make some changes. If the people in general, including you guys, seem to be disappointed with it, hopefully they can streamline it or tweak it a little bit. It seems like overall these guys kind of know what they're doing, but it seemed like overall the guys making Game of Thrones knew what they were doing, and it started to fall apart around season 5. And I feel like The Boys has some of that same trouble too, where I'm gonna say, like you're saying, like it has good parts and cool parts, but there's like this underlying hypocrisy that irks at you, right? Like The Boys in the first season made a lot of points about how, I don't know, women aren't treated as equals, but then they just put all the women in bikinis or whatever. I'm like, you're like, are you listening to your own message?
Yes. No. Like there are things that they could do that will just make the show better. I feel like if they just make it more chronological versus jumping back and forth between, I guess you could say past and present, it may make it a little easier. I understand, like having like an intro scene being a past, but having a whole episode being a past, then the next episode being present, the next episode being a past, let's stay in the past again, next episode present. I think we'll just be throwing people off a lot. But we will see. They are making season 2 part, two seasons. So I can see them focusing more on a certain direction in the first one and the later half in the second, in the third season, I guess. We'll see.
And before we end off, don't forget, I would like to let Sean see this alternate thing that got cut.
Sure. I guess we're done. Unless you have any other thoughts.
All right. Nothing I could think of. I guess I do want to let you guys know that I've made 4 of my 1-minute previews from the Best Picture nominees. I'm going to hopefully get the rest done today or tomorrow. But
awesome.
They're up on YouTube now. If you look at DancingSean on YouTube. And let me also say that it's just I sort of assume, I don't know how, if maybe people don't pay as much attention to me, but Everything Everywhere All at Once won Best Picture and a bunch of other awards.
Deserved.
I want to see that. So.
My pick for top movie of the year was The Fabelmans, and even though it was nominated for a bunch and won the Golden Globe for Best Picture and Best Director, it didn't win any of the Academy Awards. And then there's a movie called Banshees of Inisherin, which also was nominated for a bunch and won a couple Golden Globes, but didn't win any Academy Awards. But I realized, I watched it a second time, and I realized it's got this whole air to it that I didn't pick up in the first place. I thought it was good in the first place, but I'm starting to realize it might be like an even more beautiful, genius movie than I thought it was in the first place. Those are probably my top 3 recommendations. And I did videos for those 3 already. I also did one for Women Talking, which is also my top 5 of the year. And my other top 5 of the year that I haven't done a video for yet, but I'm going to do them all, was the war movie All Quiet on the Western Front. But
awesome.
Anyway.
That's awesome.
I'm going to throw that out there.
All right. So I assume you're going to stream that thing.
Oh, yeah, sure.
On here.
I can do that.
He is just setting it up. Sean, so we can watch it on Discord.
I thought yours would have been done already. How can I do this?
So while we're waiting, I just want to share a thought. Having gone through this process of trying to make 1-minute reviews for these movies, that I'm also trying to not spoil stuff. I'm trying to talk about like tone and the genre, but not get into how the plot resolves or whatever. Even with that, it's hard to narrow it down to just 1 minute. There's a quote, I wish I knew who said this, but it's something like, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. The idea is it's hard to only cover the top most important. I have all this thoughts and data about the movies, but it's hard to narrow down to just 1 minute worth of material. Imagine these videos that we're doing talking about Last of Us, we're usually taking around 2 hours. What if we had to do it in 1 minute?
Oh, man.
You'd have to spend a lot of time to narrow down, though you'd probably spend a whole hour figuring out what to say in 1 minute. But
yes, that's fair. All right, is it ready?
Hopefully,
it should be ready.
Get someone to watch something for 1 minute, and then get someone to watch something for an hour. But all right, there's the little thing on here that says "watch." Should I click that?
Yes. I heard you join it. And double check me to make sure that there is audio.
Okay, hit it once. There's not.
There is not audio. That's annoying. Is there a way I can fix that?
Actually, play it one more time. Let's see if there's was there supposed to be audio immediately at the beginning?
Yes,
okay.
There was. Can I just do this? Do you see I do. This here?
One quick gaming fact about The Last of Us.
And it's full screen now. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
the shoot of an ending that would later on be scrapped. Neil Druckmann chose violence that day and decided to prank Troy Baker. How so? Well, he asked Merle Dandridge to go in a specific direction for this final shoot, and then told Troy that
no matter what happens in the scene, don't stop. Play it all the way through.
And what was the end result? Well, see the masterpiece for yourself.
Get away from her! Get away!
You can't save her, even if you get her out of here. What then?
It's not for you to decide.
You can still do the right thing, Joe.
No. Die! Die! Come on, Ellie. We gotta go. Let's get you out of here. Your brain is worth more.
And that is.
That's pretty awesome on a bunch of levels.
Yeah, it is.
Neil Druckmann chose violence that day.
But yeah, this has been fun. Thank you, Sean, for coming in and reviewing and Horn Hero. And that'll be it for tonight.
All right.
Yeah, have a good night. Bye-bye, everyone.